everybody, and welcome back to my channel. My name is AshleyElyse. Thank you so much for tuning in for this week's video. As you guys can see by the title, I have officially welcomed our little girl into the world. For those of you who do not follow me on Instagram, we did reveal her name when she was born. Her name is Novalee Rain, and she is just about the most precious little thing I think I've ever seen. This is our first baby, so there's a lot of learning. This was my first birth experience, and it was all very overwhelming. It was a lot to take in. I did not have a typical birth story where things were easygoing, in and out, you know, easy overall. I had a pretty rough pregnancy. Those of you guys who have been following me on my channel for a while now know quite a bit about that journey. But to kind of sum that up for those of you who are new here, I found out I was pregnant, and shortly after I was hospitalized with hyperemesis because I was unable to eat or drink anything and keep it down. So I spent a lot of my time very, very ill in the beginning. We finally were able to, sorry, I've got the baby next to me here, so I'm trying to keep her happy while I'm doing this video, so if you see me looking to the side, that's why. Anyway, so once I was hospitalized, we were able to find a medication, or a couple of medications that I was able to start taking that wouldn't cause too much harm to her, but that would be able to keep my nausea at bay enough that I could continue eating and getting her and myself the nutrients that we both needed. So that happened. A little bit after that, we found out that I had sludge in my gallbladder because I was back in the ER for severe abdominal pain and vomiting. So at that point, we found out that I needed to have my gallbladder removed. We decided to go ahead and wait until after baby Novalee made her appearance, just because there were some risks with having the surgery during pregnancy, and you can only have it up to, I think he said, 26 weeks would be the latest that he wanted to do the surgery, just because after that point your uterus has grown so much that there's not really a lot of space for them to be able to go in laparoscopically. So we decided to go ahead and put that off until after she was born, and I just kind of managed the symptoms and everything with diet, which for the most part worked pretty well. I did have a few other gallbladder attacks throughout my pregnancy, but it was just something that I just chose to deal with. After that, I'm trying to think what else. I did end up in the ER again a little later on because I started having issues with my heart racing and irregular heartbeat, just a lot of issues of that manner, not being able to breathe very well, etc. And so at that point we found out that I have a heart condition called WPW, which is Wolff-Parkin's White syndrome, I think is what it stands for. But basically I have a second pathway in my heart that should not be there, that kind of causes my heart to get confused and kind of beat out of rhythm. So that is another procedure that I'm going to have done. It's a minor procedure, nothing very serious. It's also going to be pretty similar to the gallbladder surgery that I'm supposed to be having done. As of now, my gallbladder surgery is scheduled for next Thursday, so there very well may not be a video that following week on Monday. We'll see kind of how things go. But that's scheduled for then. The heart surgery will probably be done later on. We'll kind of play that by ear. But that kind of sums everything up, and believe it or not, that is the shortened and condensed version of everything that kind of happened during my pregnancy. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that I have forgotten. There's just a lot. It was very, like I said, overwhelming. But as far as that goes, on August 23rd, which was a Friday, I ended up back in the ER for severe rear flank pain. We could not figure out what was causing it. We thought, okay, well maybe it's the gallbladder. There was talk of it possibly being kidney stones. but there was nothing definite, nothing that they were able to really find out for sure. Because I was pregnant, they didn't want to do any imaging and expose her to any sort of radiation or anything like that through x-ray or CT. So the plan was to kind of, you know, try and treat the pain with pain medications and see if that helped. So we were admitted. We finally got to a room, and they started the pain medication and IV, all of that. Because of the severe pain I was having, I was vomiting essentially from the Monday before all the way up until the point that I got to the hospital, and I hadn't really eaten anything. I was really super sick. I was in a lot of pain. So they got the pain medications going. They started my IV to try and get my baby girl. Yeah, there you go. To try and get me hydrated and back to a point where I could at least manage the pain. However, after starting the pain medications, they began to wear off pretty quickly. So within probably half an hour of getting the pain medication, I was back to the pain level that I was when I came in. Because of that, we talked with the OB. My OB actually was not on call that weekend. She has a practice that, you know, has a bunch of other OBs. So one of her coworkers was actually the one working with me, and she was fantastic. I could not have been happier. But basically, we got to a point where she said, we need to really kind of figure out if it's worth going full term, and kind of weigh the risks versus the reward. So we really sat down and discussed everything, and we talked about doing, getting induced, which was not part of my plan. You know, but people always say that things don't always go according to plan, especially when it comes to birth. So it's nice to have a plan, but always expect those things to change, and that could not have been more true for my circumstances. I was fully expecting to go full term with her, because I hadn't had any sort of reason not to. She was born at 36 weeks and 5 days. So she was about 3 weeks shy of full term. However, she was perfectly healthy. So we did do the induction. It was a long and painful process. I did get an epidural. I was not able to do a birth without pain medication. I was already in excruciating pain from my back. And to be honest, I just don't handle pain well. So I knew going into this that I really wanted to have the epidural. I needed that extra help. So I did get the epidural. It all went well. However, during that process, the left side of my body decided that it was going to wear off. It did not wear off completely, so I did have some, it's okay, baby. It's okay. It's okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, so I did have the epidural. It began to wear off, I don't know, probably an hour in on the left side of my body. My right side remained completely numb. So they gave me an extra dose, and every time it kind of just lasted less and less time. So pushing was interesting, very interesting. It was quite very different. It was not at all what I had expected, and to be fair, I hadn't even, my husband and I didn't even have a chance to go to our childbirth class that we were actually scheduled to attend that Saturday and Sunday. So we didn't really know a whole lot of what to expect. I had watched a lot of videos on YouTube as far as birth videos and things like that, so I really expected it to be a certain way, and it was not. But that was okay. We figured it out. We made it through on our own, doing whatever we felt was appropriate and what we felt was best for our situation. I did have my mom and my husband with me in the delivery room, and they could not have been more of a support for me. I really needed them, especially because I was already so tired and weak from being so sick and in pain that it made the labor process a whole lot harder on me. I cried pretty much the entire time. And then, slept when I could, but I had a really hard time sleeping. So it was just a really exhausting experience. But they really helped me to stay strong through all of it and encouraged me, and basically was everything that the support people should be for you when you're in labor. I could not be more grateful and thankful to my family, to God, to my husband, just for getting me through that, because there were so many times in that experience that I just wanted to give up and quit, and I just wanted to have it over. I mentally just kind of gave up at one point. I only ended up pushing for about 2 hours and 20 minutes. She did get stuck, so she came out with quite a bit of bruising on her head and her left arm. But we did finally get her out. She was perfectly healthy. They did have to give her some oxygen when she first came out, but because we live in Colorado, it's high altitude here, so a lot of babies actually require oxygen. A lot of babies here come out jaundice, and she did also have some issues with her bilirubin levels that we had to address. She was placed in the NICU because the hospital that we chose to have her at, they required that the baby be 37 weeks or later in order for them to room in with the mom. And so she went straight from birth. They let me hold her for, I don't know, probably 5-10 minutes, somewhere around there. And then they took her to the NICU for observation. They, swaddled her. They got her all in her own little room. And then, began checking all her vitals and all of that. Other than the bilirubin levels and her oxygen, she didn't really have any issues. She didn't have to be on oxygen in the NICU. She didn't need any IVs or anything like that. She ate really well. They didn't have any trouble. With her being, 3 weeks early, she was perfectly healthy. She was born 7 pounds 5 ounces at 7:25 on October the 24th of this year. And she is the most precious thing, and I could not be happier. I couldn't be more in love with her. She's amazing. She's such a good baby. She's so happy pretty much all of the time. She really only cries when she is hungry, and she really hates diaper changes, so she cries at those too. But other than that, she is very content. She doesn't have to be held all the time. She doesn't need to be constantly paid attention to. She's just a very happy, easygoing baby. I say that now, and I may be jinxing myself, but I'm just counting my blessings, because things could have gone so much worse than they did, especially with me having to be on the medications. She could have been born with a cleft lip or a cleft palate, which would have had to have been corrected with surgery. And so we're just very grateful that we did not have those issues with her, and that she was born perfectly healthy. I can't even imagine having gone full term. She probably would have been a 9-pound baby, and that would have been even more difficult for me, because it was hard enough getting her out the size that she was. It was just overall a very draining experience. So once she made it to the NICU, we took our time, kind of recovered in the room. I began to pump because I wasn't able to do a lot of skin to skin when she first came. And of course we weren't able to attempt breastfeeding because of her situation and mine. So I started pumping, and then I want to say the first few times that I pumped, I didn't get anything. But then I want to say a couple days later, I started to have some of that liquid gold, as they call it. And I was able to finally start getting a milk supply. I have since been able to continue that supply. I have a pretty good supply, which has been amazing. Yeah, I've had a good supply of milk, so I haven't had to worry about that. We have been strictly pumping and then feeding her via bottle because that's just what she's used to. I really wanted to breastfeed at first, but I think it became really exhausting and overwhelming for the both of us to try and learn breastfeeding on top of everything else that was already going on. Even though she wasn't, she didn't have any IVs or tubes and things like that, she did have monitors that had a bunch of cords coming off of her, which made it really difficult to be able to feed her and hold her and do everything that I personally wanted to be able to do with her. So we ended up opting to just go ahead and continue pumping so that she is still getting the breast milk, but we just don't do it probably the way most people would expect breastfeeding to be done. But it works for us. She's happy, she's fed, she's healthy, I'm happy. It gives a good balance. It allows my husband to be able to feed her whenever I really feel like I need a break. It'll allow me to leave her with someone such as my parents or my husband's parents, so we can go out for a few hours and I won't have to worry about being back at a certain time to feed her. So it just allows us a lot of freedom that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So anyway, I'm trying to think what else I am forgetting. She did have to stay a couple of days after my husband and I were released, or well, after I was released, because of her bilirubin levels. They really wanted to make sure that it didn't get too high, and she did have to have some phototherapy while she was in the hospital. They had her in a bili-blanket, which she really seemed to like and take well to. When they did end up releasing her to us to take her home, they sent us home with a bili-bed, which was really, really difficult because she was so used to being swaddled in the hospital that the bili-blanket, you could kind of like wrap around the baby and then like wrap a blanket around that so that the skin would still be in direct contact with the light. The bili-beds, however, have the lights that kind of come over the top, and so you have to lay the baby in there unswaddled, basically naked down to the diaper, and that's really the only way to do it because otherwise you cover the skin and they don't get the phototherapy that they need. Well, because she was so used to being swaddled, it didn't work out very well because we put her in there and she would just scream her head off. It was really, really rough that first night that she was home, because she hated it so much and it was so difficult to try and get her to sleep, and we could only take her out to feed her or to change her diaper, and that was really hard to just see your baby screaming and not being able to do anything about it. So, we did what we could. When we went to see her pediatric doctor the next day, we talked to them about getting a bili-blanket because of how much she hated the bed and how little we were able to keep her in there. So it really wasn't doing her any good. And so we tried to talk to them about getting her a bili-blanket to take home instead if we needed to continue the phototherapy. However, because her numbers were good enough, they felt comfortable with taking her off of the bili-blanket over the weekend. And so she's been doing really well ever since. We haven't had any issues. Her bili levels are at a good enough level that they don't feel like we need any further treatment. So that's kind of where things are at. Obviously, because of everything that had been happening and how sick I was, there was not a video last week. But I'm going to try to stick to my every Monday schedule of a new video going out at 12 p.m. Mountain Time. So if you guys are new here, please be sure to subscribe. The button is down below. Also be sure to turn on your notification bell. Every time I upload a new video, it'll notify you so that you guys can watch that and keep up with us. Also, if you're new here and you haven't already followed me on my Instagram, be sure to head over to my Instagram and do that. I will leave the information up here in the video, but it's at AshleyElyse19. And we really appreciate you guys' love, support, and patience through all of this. It's been a journey, that's for sure. There were a lot of things I had planned as far as videos went that I did not get to do. I was going to film my labor and delivery and put that up for you guys and film a welcome home video and all of that. However, because of the situation, it really just did not work out that way. I was far too sick. I didn't want any sort of video taken. My mom did get some pictures for us. She is a photographer, so I will try to maybe insert some of those in one of the videos, or even in the next one, or this one perhaps. I don't really know yet, but we have officially welcomed our new little baby girl, Novalee Rain, to the family. So you guys will get to see her in future videos and keep up with us as we get to grow. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's video, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.